exceptionally good book. We're Thankful for the Moisture, A Gay Guy's Guide to Mormon Faith, Family, and Fruit Preservation. I'm happy to take questions on any topic you want. This is really an event for the book. So if you have questions about the book or kind of related questions, those would probably be the most appropriate. But we can gab about whatever the crowd wants to talk about. I'm perfectly happy to do that.
People want to know if your baby is here.
Is my baby here? So, and just so everybody knows what's happening on my end over here, I don't have any devices. I have cameras pointing at me. We're live on a few different platforms, and oh, thank you. Oh, that's weird to see myself from somebody else's phone. People are joining on a few different platforms, and then I've just got a bunch of cameras and then people sitting back here who are reading the comments, and they're just going to shout them at me. So we figured that was probably best. Is my baby here? My baby is not here. And that probably would have been impossible for me to have him here. We have entered the point and yell phase when he wants anything, and it turns out he wants things a lot, just kind of all the time. So no, I came alone. Baby is with the grandparents, and Skylar is, as you may know if you've been following my journey the last day, is in another state. He did make his flight, so thank God.
Okay, so somebody said, hello, Mr. President, and someone else said, your hair looks great.
Thank you so much for the hair comments.
And the big question is, what's the book about?
What is the book about? Okay, thank you so much for asking, whoever that was who asked it. The book, We're Thankful for the Moisture, is a collection of my humor columns that I've written over the past about 3.5, 4 years for the Salt Lake Tribune. I was brought on to be a humor columnist for my favorite newspaper, my local newspaper, about 4 years ago. And they had a humor columnist who had written for the Tribune for a very long time, who retired and left. And one day, a reporter for the Tribune, I met up with her for lunch. We got together. She was asking me some questions about a story that she was researching. And at the end of the lunch, she said, would you have any interest in being our new humor columnist for the newspaper? And that sounded like a dream come true for me. And so I said I would be happy to do it. And they really specifically wanted me to write humor columns about my Mormon culture that I grew up in, and what it feels like for me to not be a religious person anymore, but still kind of live around this culture. How did this culture shape me? You know, how does it affect my family and so forth? And so I started writing these columns, and I started writing stories about introducing my husband Skylar to this Mormon culture that he did not grow up in, that he was not really familiar with. And what that felt like, and what I kind of learned about my own upbringing by seeing it through his eyes. And after doing that for a few months, I thought, well, I really want to also write about my childhood. And so I started writing a lot of stories about what it was like to grow up in Utah and in this Mormon family, and parts of it that were looking back that I feel a lot of nostalgia for, and parts of it that looking back I feel a lot of confusion about, and parts of it that I look back and feel a little bit of frustration about. And I'm sort of writing about all of those concepts and ideas at the same time, but I'm writing about them through the mechanism of storytelling. And after doing that for a number of years, I met up with the fine folks at Signature Books who are hosting me tonight and who published this masterpiece of a book. And I asked them, you know, would you have any interest in taking all of my columns and putting them in a book? And it was just sort of on a whim. You know, I thought like, oh, it'd be kind of fun to just have these as a collection somewhere. And they were obliged. And I'm very intimidating, so they don't know how to say no. They obliged. And they said, you know, why don't you organize the columns? And we think that it would make sense to organize them sort of chronologically with your life, you know, find all of the childhood stories and put them kind of more at the front of the book, and adult stories more at the back, and teenage stories in the middle and whatever. And I had never, you know, month after month, I write these columns and I sort of bounce around to different parts of my life and different concepts and so forth. And it was really fascinating then going through the process of organizing this and then getting it all in a book that sort of feels like a little memoir of my life in some ways, on a certain theme and on a certain topic, and reading them in that way has been a really fascinating I mean, I hope it's interesting for other people, but it was certainly interesting for me to kind of see them put together and collected in that way. And it has been so fun since we launched the book at the end of February to attend book clubs and attend events and book signings at bookstores and meet with people who have read it or are reading it. And the book and these stories have evoked a lot of memories in other people that they've been sharing with me. And it has been just a damn delight to talk with people about what the power of storytelling can do and a shared sense of humor can do for a community. So.
Someone just said that window behind you is fire.
Yeah, I'm at the offices of Signature Book. Their building is amazing, and we felt like this was appropriate because it sort of feels like a church, And I wanted to feel like I was preaching at you about Mormonism tonight in front of a stained glass church window.
Okay, so speaking of Mormonism, a couple people have said, yes, please tell us about Mormonism. One person said, I know very little about Mormonism because I'm a Catholic from the East Coast. Can you tell us some more?
In the year of 1820. Okay, no, I won't get too thorough on this, but, Mormonism is a very, very American religion. My good friend Benjamin Park, who is an incredible historian and has written a lot about Mormonism, wrote a book called American Zion. If you are really interested in going deep on Mormon history, his book is fantastic. It's one of my favorite books I've read in the last 10 years. But he describes Mormonism as America's most uniquely, America's most American religion, okay, or the most American religion that you can find because it was born of, American ideas and was founded in the United States. And Joseph Smith, the founder of Mormonism, again, we don't have to get into all the history of this, lived in upstate New York, founded the church, gathered a lot of people who trekked their way across the United States with Joseph Smith for a while, and then he died, and they followed Brigham Young and continued their journey and ended up in Utah. And those were my ancestors. And I grew up in Utah in a Mormon family that is, a very devout Mormon family that follows all of the kind of standard Mormon rules. And a lot of people, when they talk about or hear about Mormonism, they sort of think about certain ideas that are pretty unique to Mormonism. Mormons follow like a relatively strict health code, strict in some ways and loosey-goosey in other ways, but they don't drink alcohol, coffee, teas, those kinds of things. And that was a big part of my childhood and upbringing, was abstaining from those sorts of things. I spent every Sunday of my childhood going to church for 3 hours. Church is 3 hours. Now it's 2 hours. They're getting really loose, the Mormons these days. But when I was back in my day, it was the 3 hours of church on Sundays. And a lay ministry, and so every congregation was sort of divided up geographically, and you would go to church with your neighbors, and you were assigned to a certain congregation if you were a Mormon, and everybody would go to that congregation, and everybody would get assigned volunteer roles that they would fulfill for periods of time, and then they would get moved to different roles, and everybody would sort of get shuffled around. And that even included the leader of the congregation, who is a volunteer bishop who is assigned to be the leader of the congregation for 5 years or so. And so I grew up in a religion and in a culture that was extremely volunteer and community minded. And in a lot of ways that has really served me. And I think I write about those concepts in the book quite a lot. It's, in my view, a relatively strict religion in terms of what it asks of its members, and very relevant to my personal story and my book. It is not a religion that historically or currently is super affirming of gay people. And ultimately, as I made my way into adulthood, my being able to be out and be gay and also be a practicing member of the church just didn't feel like they could exist in harmony together. And so ultimately I left the church and became not religious about 12 years ago or so. But writing these stories and putting this book together has helped me really explore how, even though I'm not religious anymore, so much of who I am was shaped, and it continues to be shaped by the fact that I was born and raised and trained in this culture and with these ideas and ideals taught to me.
Okay, somebody said, everything I know about Mormonism, I learned from the Book of Mormon musical.
Just the documentary, everything you, so the question, everything I learned about Mormonism, I learned from the Book of Mormon musical, and I just called it a documentary. The Book of Mormon musical is so. Have you all seen it in here? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I saw it when it came to Salt Lake City. I'm going to share one anecdote about the Book of Mormon musical for those who are familiar with it. I saw it when it came through Salt Lake City. There were aspects of it that I really liked, and others that I was a little bit puzzled by. Obviously, it is a very kind of sardonic, sarcastic, crass depiction of Latter-day Saints, and in particular Latter-day Saint missionaries, and exaggerated certainly, but as somebody who served a Mormon mission back in the day, there were also parts of the musical that I was like, yeah, that's a little bit accurate. But there's a song in the Book of Mormon musical called Salt Lake City. I'm going to butcher it, but it's spoken with an accent, a Ugandan accent, so it doesn't sound like how I just said it. But it's a really beautiful song, actually. And it's this woman in Uganda is where they are, right? I think in the musical. This woman is singing this song about the promises of basically the American dream that she has just learned about by meeting these Mormon missionaries who were sent to Africa. And these Mormon missionaries are from Salt Lake City. And she thinks, compared to the life and the difficulties that she's going through, that Salt Lake City sounds like this like utopia, this absolutely magical place. And so she sings a song, and I think it's probably supposed to be somewhat funny, but I actually found it to be really beautiful. It's a nice sounding song where she sings about like, oh, it must be a utopia. And then she lists several examples of what would make it a utopia. And it's like things that are like the bar is so low for her, what would make life a utopia, so she's like, oh, I bet like people can actually, I can't remember any of the lyrics, but I bet people can actually like see a doctor or something. And it's things that like when we all describe like what would make life a utopia, whatever. And there were lines in it where she says something to the effect of like, oh, and I bet in Salt Lake City, like everybody's nice to each other. She's kind of talking about that. And I'm watching this in Salt Lake City with an audience that are residents of Salt Lake City who were riotously laughing because they just found it so funny to hear this person describing the place that we were currently in and in an idealistic way. And I thought, I bet this is landing so differently because here than it usually does, like in New York or wherever else. And I ended up meeting somebody who was in that cast. And I said, I have a question. And it's about the Salt Lake City song. And she said, and why people were laughing so hard? And I said, yes. And she said, that does not happen like that anywhere else we perform. I found that so interesting. Yeah. I don't know if that was interesting to everybody else, but yeah.
Okay. So another question on Mormonism. Somebody asked, what, if anything, will you take from Mormonism and instill in your young son?
The thing that I appreciate the most about what Mormonism gave me is something that you can get from a lot of different places, and whether you grew up Mormon or not, this may be a big value in your life, but the sense of community was incredibly valuable to me. So I grew up in a family and in a neighborhood where, if somebody in the neighborhood became ill or if somebody in the neighborhood broke a leg or whatever, everybody's kind of instinct was to organize and rally around them. And in some ways, like everybody's in each other's business a bit in these kinds of communities. In my experience, that was mostly a really good thing. And I live in a neighborhood now. I'm not religious, and I live in a neighborhood now where there are. I don't think there's anybody on my street, up or down, who is Mormon, and so we're not all going to church together. And I have found that I have to be a lot more deliberate about creating community in my neighborhood, where my parents, who are active Latter-day Saints, it's sort of like there's a built-in system for that. And so for me, this has been something that I've been thinking about very deliberately as a new dad, that, okay, my parents had the advantage of teaching me about what it means to have responsibility for the community around you, because we were organized into this, religious unit and given specific assignments and tasks and lists and, all these things. And for me, I am going to have to be very deliberate and conscious about how am I going to raise my kid to have that exact same experience without the structures of religion guiding that and organizing it for me.
Okay, your husband Skylar did not grow up in Mormonism.
Yeah.
So maybe we could talk about, he's kind of the inspiration for the title of your book. And somebody wanted to ask, what are Skylar's top 3 Mormon catchphrases?
Okay, yeah, I'll talk about the title first. So Skylar was the inspiration for the title of the book. That Barbara over here hates the title of this book.
I love it now. I love it now.
She loves it now. She warmed up to it. So a little history on the title of this book. I love this story, but when we decided to publish this book, I mean, it was our first meeting that I had with the publisher where I said, would you be willing to do this? And they said yes, and whatever. And I said, and we were in this very room, sitting right over there, and I said, and I already know the title for the book. And Barbara, who is your title president of Signature Books? Director of Signature Books. Barbara said, oh, okay, what is it? And I said, we're thankful for the moisture. And everyone just went flat-faced. And Barbara just said, oh, so you want moisture to be okay in the title of your book? And she said, well, we can kind of play around with you were being so polite, but Barbara, I was like, I know she hates this. Like, I was just like, oh, she hates this title. And it did make me second guess, because I was just like, oh, well, I've never done this before. Like, maybe this is bad. And so for those who might not be familiar, we're thankful for the moisture is a phrase that I grew up hearing all the time, usually at church. And it's something that Mormons in Utah, anyway, like to say whenever it rains or snows, because we live in a desert, and anytime it rains or snows here, we are truly grateful. We're thankful that it is raining or snowing. We will take any that we can get. So I would grow up going to church hearing people take to the pulpit to give a prayer to start the meeting for the day, and they would say, we're sure thankful for the moisture that we've been receiving. That's the Utah accent. And it's just kind of this funny thing. And it's become, for a lot of Mormons, it's something that a lot of people still say, but a lot of Mormons also think it's kind of funny that we say it. It's just this quirky thing. And when Skylar first moved to Utah, we were at a family event or something, I can't remember, and somebody gave a prayer and said, we're thankful for the moisture. And I heard him kind of hold back a laugh. And after, he said, what was that? And I said, what? And he said, the thankful for the moisture thing. And I was like, oh, it's just and I gave him the spiel. And he was like, that is the cutest thing I have ever heard. He just thought it was so adorable. And so he started saying it all the time to anyone, every time it rained, we'd walk past neighbors' houses and he would yell, we're sure thankful for the moisture, whatever. And I'd be like, he's making a joke, but he is also thankful for the moisture, and so when I decided to put this book together, that phrase felt like the right thing to me. And but then I Signature was like, well, and Barbara in particular. And so we played around with a lot of titles, and everybody kind of pitched some, and I liked a lot of them, but I kept saying yeah, we could do this one. I still do really think that we're thankful for the moisture is the right title, but I finally got to a point where I was like, I'm just going to give up on this. Whatever. It's just the title of a book. And one night, I don't know if I've told you this story, but I was lying in bed and I could not sleep. And I was thinking about this, and it was really bothering me. And Skylar was there, and he said, what, why are you restless? And I said, yeah, I can't sleep. I'm thinking about the title for this book. And I said, I just can't figure out what the title should be. And Skylar said, you already figured out the title for the book. It's We're Thankful for the Moisture. And I said, and I said, yeah, but they don't really like it that much. And he said, okay, well, pitch it to me. Why do you think it should be called that? And I thought about it for a moment, and I said, we're thankful for the moisture is a quirky phrase that we say sincerely. It's odd, it's bizarre, and ultimately it's an expression of gratitude that we say earnestly, and it's an expression of gratitude for something that is not always easy to be grateful for, which is bad weather. And that is how I feel about my stories and my experience of growing up Mormon and grappling with all of what that entails. It's these stories and the culture that surround it and my upbringing. It's quirky, it's odd, it's weird. And yet this is still a phrase that I could say very earnestly and sincerely about all of it, which is that I'm still thankful for it anyway, even though sometimes it's a thing that is not always easy to be thankful for. And I said that to Skylar, and he was just like, that's your pitch. And so I went back to Signature and I said, I will drop this if you want me to drop it, but I really think this is the title for the book. And then they came back and said, okay, as long as we have the subtitle, A Gay Guy's Guide to Mormon Faith, Family, and Fruit Preservation, so people will know what the hell this book is. And I saw the subtitle, and I was like, done. I love it. Yes. And so now we're all on board. Everybody's happy.
And everybody loves the title and subtitle.
Yeah.
They're great. So happy consensus.
Happy consensus. The three phrases that Skylar loves the most. Number one is, we're thankful for the moisture, is his favorite phrase to say. Number two is, this one's slightly more obscure, but there's a Mormon film that was made in the 90s called Legacy, if you know, you know, about the Mormon pioneers coming across the plains. And at the time, I mean, I think it's a beautiful film. I probably wouldn't enjoy sitting down to watch it now, but it was beautifully shot. It had a budget. It wasn't like one of these really hokey kind of low budget films. And there's this romance in the film between these two pioneers. And one of them, the man, gets sent off to war, basically. And they're trying to get to Salt Lake City to finally settle here, which the Mormon pioneers would call Zion. They would say, we're trying to make it to Zion, which is this kind of utopian place that they were hoping to get to. And so there's this scene in this movie right before the man goes off to war where they're standing kind of silhouetted in this forest, and the sun is on them, and she's crying because he's leaving. And he says, we'll meet again in Zion, meaning that he's going to, after the war, go and catch her in Salt Lake City in Zion. And she says back to him very weepily, if we ever do meet again, it will be Zion to me. And this is a phrase that a lot of my friends kind of growing up, we would say to each other when we say, saying goodbye to each other, like, all right, see you later. If we ever do meet again, it'll be Zion to me. Like we would, mockingly, little smartasses. And so when Skylar learned that one, that's one that he loves to say when he leaves the house. And then the final one is, he tells me very regularly and this is something our parents would say to us when we were kids and we were leaving the house. They would say, goodbye, return with honor. And so he likes to tell me to return with honor whenever I go anywhere.
Dr. Juicy Jazz wrote, thanks to your book and Skylar, I've started saying, if I ever see you again, it will be Zion to me.
Thank you for telling me.
Someone else wants to know, what's your favorite column in the book?
Okay, I'm going to give three answers because I have three different categories of columns that are my three favorites in the book. One is a funny, like a kind of more of a purely funny column. One is a serious or more heavy column, and then one is a sentimental, nostalgic column. The funny one, my favorite funny column in the book is Singing Nuns, about my childhood best friend Sam and I begging our mothers to make us nun costumes for Halloween. I really like how that one turned out. Number two, the kind of more heavy column that I am really proud of is a column that I wrote about, and I can't remember what we call it in the book. I think it's ice cream something, has the words ice cream in it. But it was about growing up, going to a church meeting with my dad every 6 months that all the boys and men do. What's it called in the book? Do you see it? Did you find it? You just shout it out when you hear it, when you see it. We White Shirt Army. I think that's what it's called, actually, not ice cream.
That's the one.
I misled you. So in the book, it's called White Shirt Army. So it's about growing up, going to this church meeting every 6 months that all kind of boys age 12 and up go to with their dads and uncles and grandpas, and it's broadcast by satellite at church meeting houses and whatever. And it was always a tradition after these meetings to then go with your male family members to get ice cream. And these meetings were on Saturday evenings, and it would end at like 9 or 10. And so everybody in Utah in their white shirts and ties would leave this church meeting and go just swarm whatever the local ice cream place was to get ice cream together. And it was just this tradition that I participated in for a couple of decades, almost a couple of decades. And the column is about describing that tradition, leaving the religion, and then realizing that like I wasn't going to be doing that tradition with my dad anymore. You know, we can always still go get ice cream, but that whole tradition, that entire process was not something I was going to be doing anymore. And the column is about grappling with how I feel about that internally myself, and how I'm kind of grappling with the idea that this is probably something that makes my dad sad, even though he's never expressed that to me, because, he's tried to be supportive of me. And so that column is more of a heavy one. And then the final one, and this is one of these examples of sometimes I'll write something that I'm like, oh, this is really good, what I've just done, that nobody seems to care about. And then sometimes I'll write something and I'm like, I hope that was okay. And then that's the popular thing. The final column, the final essay in the book, is a very nostalgic essay about a 4th of July with my family as a child. And it's sort of just describing like what a typical 4th of July looked like in my family and in my neighborhood, and what community looked like around holidays like this. And although it's probably an essay that would have been more appropriate to put at the front of the book because it's really a childhood story, when I put the book together, I made an exception on that one. And I really felt like this final essay summarizes the tone and the feeling and the theme of what I think you find most consistently through the book. And so that's how I wanted it to end.
Your readers really like the ice cream one too. People have been commenting on that. Someone said that ice cream one broke my heart in a sweet, sappy, happy, and sad way.
Thank you.
Which is a lot of your columns, frankly. Somebody said, I just want to say, definitely was on your team for Survivor.
You were on my team. Did
you try out for Survivor?
No. Did I rant about Survivor recently? Sometimes I talk so much I don't even hear myself anymore. But probably talking about on the Hive Mind podcast, which is a TV and movie podcast that I co-host. I have been ranting and raving about Survivor season 50. Oh, no, I know what you're talking about. I did a video about Skylar looking up spoilers. I know what you're talking about. Skylar looked up spoilers for season 50, and it was the biggest marital fight we have ever truly had. I was so mad at him.
This person was on your team.
Everyone was on my team. Literally everyone. I shared about this on TikTok, and everyone was like, how could he? And I'm like, exactly. And he has repented. He has fully repented. An update for those who care. He did inform me that I had misunderstood him. He only saw spoilers for the first 5 episodes, so he actually doesn't know what happens for the rest of the season. And he has promised me he will not go anywhere near spoilers, because now he realizes what a big deal it is. So, yeah.
Okay. Someone asked, would you consider Salt Lake City LGBTQ friendly? And followed up by another question, have you ever met the Osmonds?
Is Salt Lake City LGBTQ friendly? Yes. It frequently makes lists as like one of, or the gayest city in America. It's funny, in red states, and I think this happens to a degree in blue states, but more so in red states and more so in Utah, everyone who is gay who lives in Utah or kind of around us wants to, if they're not going to leave the area altogether and go to like New York or LA or whatever, if they want to kind of stay in the area, we all gravitate into one place. And so Salt Lake City is chock full of gays. My street in Salt Lake City, row of houses, is like every other house all the way up the street is just gays, and then every other house are allies, And so I find Salt Lake City specifically to be an incredibly affirming place. Really interesting thing about Utah as well, we are a very conservative state as a whole, but of all of the red states, we have on the books by far the most protective LGBTQ laws of any red state. We were the first red state now exactly 11 years ago now, to pass very broad sweeping anti-discrimination protections for gay and trans people. We banned conversion therapy a couple of years ago and did it in a legislature that voted unanimously to ban conversion therapy. So Utah's kind of a weird place when it comes to gay and trans rights. Like we're up and down there. In some ways we have tough moments. For a red state, it's a really good place to live as a gay man, and Salt Lake City is an extremely good. In fact, more than half of our city council in Salt Lake City is gay. Like we just have a very gay city. Come on over, you'll see lots of pride flags.
which is typically very surprising for people outside of Utah.
It surprises a lot of people because people think of like, oh, Salt Lake City Mormons. But the population of people who actually live in Salt Lake City is not majority Mormon. And a lot of the kind of Mormons who want to live in Salt Lake City want to live in Salt Lake City specifically because it's a much more progressive place. And although they're Mormon, they, are more progressive. So an interesting city.
Yeah. Have you met the Osmonds in Salt Lake City?
Have I met the Osmonds? I have never met an Osmond. I don't think I have.
What about David Archuleta?
I've met David Archuleta. I've met Mitt Romney. That was before he got really mad at me. That anecdote is in this book. Mitt Romney got extremely mad at me about something that I wrote that is in this book that he did not actually read. Oh, I'm going to hold up the book so you can see it. Many of you are familiar with the story. I'm sure I won't tell the entire thing here, but basically I wrote a column that referenced Mitt Romney that he clearly did not read, and then he took to social media and ranted and raved about it the next day because he thought that I had said something about him that I had not said. And then that made national and international news that Mitt Romney was like mad at me, and then he went and read the column and like kind of apologized for it. So but I've met Mitt Romney. Who are other like big Utah Mormon celebrities? Trying to think of handful of others.
Mrs. Fields.
Mrs. Fields is from Utah?
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? One quick anecdote. I write a column in here about a musician named Michael McCann, who is a Utah musician. He has a Christmas concert that he's been putting on for like 40 years. Like every Christmas he puts it on. And a lot of people, he's popular here. A lot of people really love him. And I wrote a column in here where I poke fun at him as like, and his concert as being kind of saccharine and whatever. And I talk about taking Skylar to, my family took us to this concert, taking Skylar to it for the first time and like feeling like it was a hazing ritual for him because Skylar like went to this and was like, what is this? Whatever. And that column went in the newspaper a few years ago. And the next day I opened up, I almost never do this. I almost never open LinkedIn because that place is so boring to me. But I opened LinkedIn and I had a message from Michael McCann. Do you know this? And my heart sank. I've never met this man, right? And I've just written in the newspaper essentially making fun of him. Like he could read that and interpret it as like, oh, he's making fun of me in the newspaper. And I was like, oh no, do I even want to read this, message? And so I click on it and he was like, I read the column and I laughed myself to tears. Thank you so much. You just made my day. And he was such a good sport about it. And then his son, Jeff McCann, Michael McCann and Jeff McCann have a book coming out as well. I wish I remember what it was called. But he reached out to me recently when he got a hold of the book and just said like, my family cherishes that you have poked fun at my dad and that it is now in a book. We just, are. So it made me respect him 1,000 times more. I love it when people can poke fun at themselves.
Okay. Somebody also wants to know if you've met Jeanette McCurdy.
No.
From iCarly days.
Jeanette
McCurdy.
No.
She's a Mormon, ex-Mormon who wrote a memoir.
Oh, okay. I do know a couple of the housewives. I know Lisa and Bronwyn. And I've met Meredith and Heather and Whitney. Small Lake City, we end up. I don't know any of the Mormon wives, Secret Lives of Mormon Wives women. I don't know.
Heather Gay?
Heather Gay, yeah, I've met Heather Gay. She's been really sweetly supportive of this book, actually, which is nice.
Okay. Some people who just jumped on are saying, "What's going on? What's Eli talking about?" So maybe you could bring people up to get on your book. Does this
look bizarre to you guys? Okay, so if you're just joining us, breaking news. This is a virtual event that I'm doing for my book. We're thankful for the moisture. I've been attending book clubs with people, which has been so fun. And I put out an offer and said, if your book club reads my book, We're Thankful for the Moisture, I will attend your book club to talk about it in person or remotely or whatever. And I've been attending those. They've been so fun for me. But I've also had a lot of people say, I don't have a book club and I just want to, but I still want to like join something or attend something. but I can't attend any of your in-person events that you're doing in Utah because I don't live in Utah. And so we decided to just put together a virtual event that anybody could join on YouTube or TikTok and ask questions and, stay as long as you'd like, leave if you want, whatever. We're really casual here.
Okay. People are commenting on how handsome you are and how great your hair looks.
Thank you so much. People feel like they have to say my hair looks good. I think that I've bullied people into saying my hair looks good. I think this is a thing that is now happening in my life, but I'm not mad about it. No regrets.
Someone wanted to ask if Skylar is in this feed to defend himself tonight.
Have you seen him pop up?
I haven't seen him. Skylar, are you there?
Is Skylar, if you're in this feed, if you're in this room, make yourself present. Flicker the lights. He would be here with me tonight, except that he is out of town on a work trip. A lot of you saw this video on TikTok the other day. It was like an hour and 20 minutes before his flight, and he still had not packed and was just like wandering around the house, just dinking around. And I was like, what is happening? And I ended up driving him to the airport, and I dropped him off, and his flight was leaving in 40 minutes when I dropped him off. And I was actually surprised that we made it with 40 minutes to go. And he was like taking his time to say goodbye to our child in the car and was like sitting next to him. And I was like, don't you need to go? And he was like, oh, I'll make it. And I said, are you not worried at all? And he said, I'm probably not checking a bag. And I was like, no, you're probably not. At this point, he made the flight. He was fine. So that was a thing that happened the other day. And I'm not sure when he's coming back, but I think it's the end of the week. I don't know.
Okay. People want to know who you dedicated the book to.
I will be happy to oh, this is a signed book. My goodness. I signed it, apparently. I'm going to read. I know who I dedicated the book to, but I'll just read it to you. For my husband, Skylar, who insists on buying physical copies of the Salt Lake Tribune so he can read my column in absolute silence and without laughing once before setting down the paper and saying vaguely, this one was special. He does that with like every column.
How long did it take you to write the book?
So these are columns that I wrote over the course of just under 3.5 years. So technically it took 3.5 years to write the book, although, once we decided to put the book together, I think from the time we decided to put the book together until we had physical copies of it to sell was about 8 months, I think.
Somebody wants to know if this is a press conference.
This is a press conference. I am the new president. I'm the president of the United States. That's probably a dark joke to make right now. Yeah, sorry.
Better,
read the room, Eli. Read the room.
Okay. Somebody said, please tell Kathy McCann her spaghetti sauce recipe is the best. My son makes it every Christmas. Do you want to talk about
Oh, who wrote that? Is it somebody who knows me or just...
User 316-016-317-8784.
I have missed you. I don't know if you got that from my mom and we know you, or if I have done videos about how to make this spaghetti sauce, and I also have it on my website at justgetstranger.com. If you Google it, justgetstranger.com recipes, you can find it very easily. My mom, growing up, would can spaghetti sauce. It's a tomato sauce that then she would use to make spaghetti or a lasagna or tomato-based thing, and it was usually tomatoes from our yard and a very versatile sauce. And now I make it all the time and can it every summer, and then Skylar and I use it all winter long. It's delicious. Was there a question in there? Or I can't remember. They just wanted to say thank you. I also love the sauce.
And now, since you accidentally called yourself the president, people are encouraging you to run for president.
I don't think I will ever run for office.
Okay. Here's a great question. Which essay would you recommend to someone who isn't familiar with your work, i.e. my mom?
The essay I would recommend there are many essays in here I would recommend to somebody who's not familiar with my work. And by the way, because these are essays that are columns that I wrote in a newspaper, I have to intentionally write them in a way understanding that people are going to pick up the newspaper and not know who I am, even though at this point, most people who are reading my column in the newspaper are familiar enough with me, but I do have to write them in a way that's like I'm sort of reintroducing myself in hopefully kind of subtle ways so that somebody can pick it up and read any of these essays and understand kind of who I am and appreciate the story. My favorite one to recommend is Singing Nuns. I mentioned a little bit earlier. That's page 19. You don't have to have any familiarity with Utah Mormonism, me, any of it to read that just as a complete story. There are any of the Christmas columns are, very easy to read during Christmas time. You don't have to know anything about me to read those, and I think appreciate them. Page 142, speed bumps, about Skylar becoming obsessed with trying to get speed bumps put into our street over like 2 years. And then the final essay, The Simple Hum of a People Gathered, which is about the 4th of July, experiencing the 4th of July in community as a child, and growing up and looking back on that with nostalgia.
This question's come up a couple times now. Has anyone else in your family left Mormonism, or are you the only one?
Has anyone else in my family left Mormonism? Well, first of all, I say I have a gigantic extended family. I think I have 72 first cousins. When Skylar, I write about this in the book actually, but when I first told Skylar that, he was like, no, just first cousins. How many do you have? And I said 72. And he said, no, not second cousins, not like once removes, not spouses, not including spouses, not including their children, all this. And I was like, I looked at him and I said, Skylar, I have 72 first cousins. I know what a first cousin is. I know what a first cousin is better than anyone in the world. Why do I know? Because I have 72 of them. And he was like, that's not possible. It's not possible. So I had to sit down. I had to flow chart this I had to diagram this for him. And I was like, my mother is the oldest of 10 children. She has 9 siblings. All 9 of them have children. When they have an average of 4 children each. 9 times 4 is 9, 18, 27, 36. My father is the second oldest of 8. They have an average of 5 siblings, 5 children. Multiply that. When you add those 2 numbers together, it comes out to 72. And he was like, oh my God. It was this whole thing. Anyway, that was not the question at all. So all of that to say, in my extended family, yes, I have people in my extended family who practice Mormonism and many who don't, and then everything in between. In the family that I grew up in, no, all of my siblings and my parents are practicing Latter-day Saints as far as I know, unless they haven't told me. And so I am the quote unquote odd man out. I will say, although this wasn't the question, I've been really fortunate that my family has never tried to push religion on me, since I decided to leave it. They've been nothing but supportive of me, which has made it really easy for me to just give them space to navigate their own faith journeys, whatever those look like for them. We live in harmony together, and religion has never once for a second been any kind of wedge or awkward topic or conversation between me and my family members.
Okay, another question is, you are working on your next book. It's a fiction called Stitched. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I have a book coming out on September 8th. It is called Stitched. It is a humor novel. It is a book that I've been working on for a number of years, and it is a book about a dysfunctional group of elderly quilters in Utah who are preparing for a competition against their bitter rival group, who are also dysfunctional group of elderly quilters, but dysfunctional in a completely different way. And it's about 290 pages, I think. I finished a draft of it a few years ago and have just been like constantly obsessing over it and improving it. And it is finally coming out on September 8th. It's available for pre-order now, like anywhere you can get books online if you want to look it up. In fact, you should look it up if for no other reason to see the cover. Have you seen the cover? It's so good. It's so beautiful. They did a really good job making this cover. The reason why I wrote the book was several years ago, Skylar and I were at dinner with my parents, And my mom is this avid quilter. I grew up under a quilt frame, with all of her friends, all these ladies kind of sitting around this quilt, quilting and gossiping and chatting and laughing together. My little sister and I would just like play under this quilt like it was a fort. And that was my childhood. And we were at dinner with my parents, and my mom suddenly in the middle of dinner said, "There is a lot of drama happening in the quilting community right now, especially the Australians." And we both just looked over at her, and she just took a sip of her Diet Coke, and my 70-year-old mother, and we were like, what's going on with the Australian, And for the next 2 hours, she was like, well, there was this competition and this happened, but this group got banned because they cheated, because they didn't actually do the hand quilting, and you could tell, and she's just, and this group, my group, we get along very well, but this woman in our group, she swears a lot, but she's really funny, and she's just 2 hours of this. And I am not kidding you when I say, like, that 2 hours felt like 3 minutes. Like, we were both just like, really, and asking follow-up questions. And it was so interesting and funny, and I got mad a couple of times at how could they do that, this whole thing. So we leave this dinner and we got in the car, and Skylar turned to me and he said, "You have to write a book about this." And I said, "About the quilters of the world?" And he said, no, because he'd been wanting me to write a novel for a long time, and I never had any interest in writing a novel. I like writing personal essays. And he said, "No, you need to write a novel about this. It would be so funny and so charming." And I said, "I don't want to write a novel," and I wouldn't even know where to start. And so he said, "Well, what do you think what would be an interesting story? Let's just say as a thought exercise." And so we went home and we ended up staying up late, and we built out kind of the bones of a story of well, it'd be kind of fun if the story did this, and characters were kind of like this, and what if it ended like this, and we came up with this ending that we're like, oh, that's a really cool ending for this kind of story. And so he was like, Eli, you have to just try. And I'm like, I don't want to write it, but it's kind of an interesting idea. Well, a few months later, I had some time on a Saturday morning, and I kept thinking about this, and so I was like, I'll write the first chapter and just kind of get it out of my system. And so I sat down and wrote the first chapter, and I read it, back, and I was like, oh, I kind of like this. And I kind of want to write the next chapter. And I just kept plugging along. And eventually I was like, oh, I love this book that I'm writing. This is a book that I want to read. And so I finished it, and I'm really proud of how it turned out. It's been through so many iterations at this point, and I just need to get it. I just need to get it out, but so we're in the final stages of just kind of proofreading, and I'll promote that in the fall. And I'll be re-promoting We're Thankful for the Moisture again in the fall as well as I do that.
People are talking about your audiobook of We're Thankful for the Moisture, and a couple of people just started listening after joining the live, and they're saying they love it.
Oh,
already.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you want to talk about the audiobook?
Yeah, the audiobook was really fun. And thank you all people at Signature Book. I know it was a lot of work for you. Yeah, John. Thank you, John. And I'm sorry about the number of times I loudly swore on that. So I recorded the audiobook in Signature Books studio, and it was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I've recorded audio, but like a 5 or 10 minute segment. I've never sat down to just record a book, and it took me, I did it between Christmas and New Year's, and I just came in every day and just sort of sat in there and did it until I couldn't handle it anymore. And I'm making the joke to John, who edited all of it, because I would say a sentence, stop, swear into the mic, and say, "Sorry, John." And but it was really fun to record the audiobook, and I was definitely the right person to record it. I think it needed to be in my voice. I think it would have been weird to have anybody else read it. And it's been fun hearing from people that have enjoyed hearing it as an audiobook, and have preferred hearing it that way, because you hear the stories a little bit differently when somebody is reading them to you in their own voice. But I'm really happy that we have that.
Somebody just said, "Thank you. We're Thankful for the Moisture is my new favorite audiobook."
Thank you. And by the way, just a little plug for this. If you like the audiobook or, the physical book or whatever, and you haven't done so already, leave a review online. It's really helpful. It's super, super helpful. go on Amazon, or I don't know if you can do it on Barnes & Noble. You can definitely you can on Barnes & Noble. You can leave reviews on Goodreads. You can leave reviews on Audible. If you go, and you can leave like a star review, which is great, like 5 stars, whatever. But leaving even a brief written review is super, super helpful. And so if you can just like take a couple of minutes to do that, that would mean the world to me. So thank you. I really appreciate that.
Any last thoughts?
Any last questions? Maybe I'll take one or two more, or I can kind of start wrapping this up.
Oh, somebody asked you to talk about your first date with Skylar, what you write about.
Yeah. Maybe I'll share a couple of things that are not necessarily in this essay, but my first date with Skylar was in Kirtland, Ohio. It was the first time I had met him in person. We matched on Tinder, and he was living 1,000 miles away from me in Wisconsin. And so I was like, oh, I'm never meeting this person. But after a month of talking with him and calling each other, he was so funny. This is not in the book. What's that?
I said sorry. I thought it wasn't.
Oh, no. What I'm about to share is not in the book. Yeah, you were good. There was, when we matched on Tinder, it was a Saturday night, and I had gotten home from something, and I was getting ready for bed. And I just kind of opened my phone, and I saw this very handsome man, although the pictures he chose were terrible, but he was still handsome despite that. And his profile, all it said was, "I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to be America's next top model." That was all his profile said. And he was really cute, and I was like, oh, he's funny. And so I swiped right on him, and we immediately matched. And I was like, oh, we matched. And I was like, who is this person I've never seen before in Salt Lake City? And so I messaged him, and I would routinely, if I was starting a conversation on these, it's funny putting myself back in this place. It's been like 12 years since I was on a dating app. But if I started a conversation on a dating app with somebody, I would like to start with a joke, or I would say hello in like whatever, in like some language, like hola, or, other languages. And on this particular day, I messaged him, I said, shalom. And he immediately messaged back and said, with a greeting like that, how could I pass over you? Pass over one word. And I was so used to communicating with people on dating apps that the conversations were often not very intelligent. And for him to just like so quickly pull that out, and I later found out, he had just like landed. He wasn't even in Salt Lake City anymore. He had a 1-hour layover in the Salt Lake City airport, and then opened his Tinder, swiped right on me, closed it, got on his plane and flew off. And by the time I messaged him, he got that message, and he had just gotten off of his plane, and he got that message. And so he's walking through the airport typing that, And I was like, oh my gosh, he's so funny. And so then we, had this banter, and he was hilarious. And then I found out he lived 1,000 miles away from me. And I was like, ugh, of course you don't live here. I'm never going to meet you. But after a month, he talked me into flying out to Cleveland, Ohio, to go to a wedding with him for a weekend. And I went out there and discovered that Cleveland, Ohio is right next to a town called Kirtland, Ohio, which is a very famous Mormon pioneer town with a lot of history, and I had never been to it. So I ended up going, I got to Cleveland before Skylar got there, and I went and spent a day in Kirtland touring these sites. And this is what's in the book, so I won't tell the whole story. But our first date was when Skylar finally arrived in Cleveland, and I told him about Kirtland and that I had been there. He wanted to go see this place that was a big part of my heritage. And so our first date, hilariously, was touring Mormon sites, me and this gay guy from, originally Portland, Oregon, and a hippie family, taking him through these Mormon historical sites and explaining to him my entire background, which is now just this book. So
you took him to the temple on your first date?
Yep, our first date was at the Kirtland Temple. Just wild.
Maybe a last question here.
Okay.
Will there be a second edition? Do you want to do a second edition of this with more columns?
We've not talked about this.
We are now.
This is now a business meeting. Will there be a second edition? I very, very much want there to be, and I think maybe we can call it "We're still thankful for the moisture." We'll have that fight when we're ready.
I'm good.
Yeah, I continue to write columns for the Salt Lake Tribune, and I think since we put the book together, I've written probably 10 or so. And so I'll continue to write those. And once we have a critical mass of those, I will definitely be talking to the good people at Signature Books, and I would absolutely love to do a second one. And I think we've gotten such incredible support from so many of you and such great feedback. And this has been a really fun and successful book launch that I think it would be a no-brainer. Yeah.
We agree.
Okay.
And your fans agree. They're begging for a second edition because they didn't want this book to end.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think maybe we'll wrap up there. Thank you to those of you who joined on YouTube. Thank you to those who have joined on TikTok. We really appreciate it. This is so fun for me. If you do have a book club and you want to read this book for your book club, talk your book club into reading it, getting the book, and I will come and attend your book club. If you live anywhere near me, I will come in person. If you don't, I will attend remotely. We'll figure out how to do it remotely. I've been doing both in-person and remote events, and they've all been fun. They've all been a party. They're hilarious. It's been so fun to actually get to talk with people. I've been talking at you for the past hour, but it's fun to do this kind of conversation style with people. So just reach out to me. You can find me anywhere on social media. I'm very easy to contact. Okay. I'm very, very easy to contact. Too easy to contact, actually. But just reach out to me and we'll set something up. I keep getting messages and emails from people that are like, I don't know if you were serious about that book club offer. I'm dead serious. You guys are way underestimating how much I love attention. Okay. I will absolutely attend your book club remotely or in person.
You're coming to mine next month.
I'm coming to Barbara's next month. In July, in the first week of July, I'm going to be in Portland, Oregon, Vancouver, Washington area for a full week, and I'm attending 2 book clubs there. And so if you're in that area, let me know, and we can probably arrange something for the 4th of July week for me to attend. And I'll keep people posted if I'm going to be in other places, and we can do that. So.
And last thing, people are asking who got on late if this will be available to watch after if it's recorded. Do you want to tell them it is?
It's going to be available on YouTube, definitely. What's the best way for them to find that?
It'll be on Signature's YouTube page.
Okay, so
Under live.
signaturebooks.com.
Under our YouTube. So go to YouTube.
Oh.
And then we can put a link to it too on our
Yeah,
on
the
our
bottom
website.
of our website does have a link.
If you go to YouTube and search Signature Books, they will have it available on YouTube. I don't believe I can make it available on TikTok. I will look into it and see if I can, but you most definitely will be able to watch this on YouTube if you go to Signature Books page. And I'll plug this on social media as well and link it for people who maybe missed part of it or all of it.
And lots of people are joining your fan club.
Thank you. I don't know what that means. I'm new to TikTok Live, but
We have 19 fans now.
Thank you for joining my fan club. Please continue to do so. I don't know how that benefits any of us in any way, but maybe it will. Maybe it matters. Maybe when the rapture happens, only people in my fan club will be raptured. Or maybe only people in my fan club will be left. Either way, we're in a good group here. Okay. All right. Thank you. And I think we'll go ahead and cut it off there. Bye, everyone.